Good evening, guys. I'm Chris, and welcome back to another episode of Rift Amps.
Well, the rain has returned. It is Tuesday, the 20th, 19th, 20th of August. It genuinely feels like autumn right now. We've gone from temperatures in the low to mid 20s down to the mid teens now. It's quite cold and it's absolutely chucking it down. It's going sideways.
Quick update on the red plate. For those that asked, yes, I will do you all some sound samples of this when it is fixed, show you what all the switches and features do. But I just wanted to show you, I've tried cleaning up the carbon on the sockets. This one, isn't it? That's the best I can manage. The Q-tips came out rather dirty, so Q-tips and Servicol. But if I measure DC resistance between the two terminals, I'm getting rather a low reading, so there is still a short there. I'll show you. So there you go. So red is on the anode, black is on the heater, and we're getting around 145 kilo ohms of resistance between those two terminals. Now, ideally, it should be way above 20 meg. Open circuit is, as high as your meter can go. But there's still something there, and I'm not happy with it. And I'll just put, I'll do the same test on another amp just to show you what it should look like. So on the 57 Tweed builds that I'm doing, I've done the same connection point. You can see it's well over 20 meg. So there's definitely still a risk of arcing there. So my only option now, because I've tried cleaning it the best I can, and well, now I've cleaned off the top layer, I can see how bad it actually is. I've got to replace the socket, so I've got some on order. Right then, Q&A time. I seem to have lost a week. I don't know where it's gone, but I'm just looking at my build schedule, what I've got to get done, by what dates, that sort of thing. I'm a week behind, and I don't know why, because I haven't gone anywhere. I've been here every day, working flat out, but I appear to be a whole week behind where I should be, which is concerning because I am off on holiday in 4 weeks' time for a week in September. So not only do I need to catch up the week that I'm behind, I've also got to get ahead by a week to cover that holiday. So it's just, I just can't work out where it's gone. Anyway, Q&A time. Let's have a look then. Lots of comments and questions that have come in. I apologise if I don't get to your question or I haven't picked it this week. A lot of the questions were similar. So I've had the same or a similar question from 3 or 4 people. So I've just picked. So if you've asked a question, but I'm answering someone else's question that is the same, yeah, don't be offended. It's just maybe that question was worded better for this part of the video. But anyway, that's what we're doing. So, 1958 Gibson Les Paul says, yet another great video. Chris, talking about Sunday's video. Really great to see and hear that 52 gold top. Yeah, absolutely killer. Josh, how long has he owned it for now? Is it a couple of years? I think it is. Got it from the States. It's had a refret, but it's just magical to play. Such a great one. It's the third 52 gold top that I've been lucky enough to play. Now, 52 gold tops are my dream guitar. I hate that phrase, but yeah, that's the one I want. I want an early one with the unbound neck and the diagonal mounting screws on the neck pickup, but Josh's one is just sublime to play. It's so much fun. And as you saw in that video, it's so easy to manipulate those harmonics and get this thing to sing. Just an amazing guitar. So yeah. Anyway, question. Relating to the Vox amp here and other amps you've worked on, have you ever worked on an amp that just out of the box sounds amazing, only to find that some of the caps and resistors are well outside tolerance, but have had a positive effect on tone? Have you then decided to leave it as is, or upgraded them anyway, and has this affected the tone positively/negatively? Great question. Brilliant question. So short answer, yes. I can think of numerous examples of amplifiers that have come in that just straight away out of the box are just next level compared to other ones. So, as you know, on this channel, I get lots of vintage amplifiers in, lots of black panel, silver panel Fenders, for example, lots of Tweeds, certain Marshalls I get more than other models, and you kind of generally get a good idea of what these things should sound like. But sometimes one pops in and it's just, there's something going on with that amp that's great. And I can think of a particular amplifier where I found a capacitor that's in a very critical position that the owner very kindly allowed me to desolder the cap and measure it, because I was really curious as to why that particular part of the circuit on the scope and the spectrum analyzer was performing the way it did compared to other ones. And I identified this particular capacitor, and it should be one particular value. That's what it's marked at, and it's probably got a 20% tolerance. But when we measured it, yes, it was ever so slightly leaky, but its value was 5 times larger than what it should be. We then subbed in our experimentation the correct value, so put it back to its original value, and the amplifier lost pretty much all of its mojo. Everything that was great about that particular amp was completely lost. Put the original back in and it all returned. I then put in a replacement cap of the larger value that wasn't leaky, and it retained all of that magic. And that was the point where I went, okay, there's something in that particular position and the way that's working and the way what it's doing that's making this particular style circuit sound great. And it's that sort of thing that you have to be prepared to think outside the box on. So you can do your sums and your calculations for working out what values you need, but sometimes, and this is why the Ainsley Lister signature also sounds incredible, because on paper it doesn't work. No designer in their right mind would choose to operate the circuit with those values and at those voltages and those impedances. You wouldn't do that. But in that particular amplifier, it does work. It bucks all the trends, and they're the magic amps. Reason I'm not telling you what the other amplifier is because it's owned by quite a famous player, and it's part of his unique sound, and I'm in agreement with him. I'm not allowed to give away what it is, but yes, to answer your question, and I am going on a bit here, because that cap had changed in value over its lifetime and was 5 times larger, it made that particular amp sound incredible, and so we put a modern replacement in of the same value, not its original value, but the same value, but one that's not leaky, and it retained all of that goodness. So yeah, you come across it all the time. What about negatively affecting stuff? Yeah, that happens a lot. That happens a lot. And this is, what was the story with Clapton, Strat, and Seymour Duncan, where the volume pot was it meant to be 250k, but the one in the guitar measured, was it Blackie or was it Brownie? If you know this story, put it in the comments below. But that's a great example of a pot that I think it measured high. I think it measured 270 or 280 or something like that. But when the pot failed, they put a standard value back in at the correct value, and that guitar lost all of its magic. And it's only when they then put a new pot in with the wrong value in, everything came back. So yeah, again, that happens all the time. Anyway, great question. Progress on this Ainsley Lister. Board is in, front pots are wired, preamp sockets, output valve sockets are wired up. Got my IEC socket, my HT fuse in. Just got to do heaters, FX loop, output jacks, input jack, that sort of thing. And then this one will be ready for testing. JJ Sant 3250, welcome to the channel. Talking about that Vibro Champ where I added the capacitor on the 6v6 socket to stem that oscillation. He says Fender added a 320, probably 330 picofarad from grid to cathode on the 6v6 on the AB764 version of the Vibro Champ to stem that oscillation. I took it off mine since it can be considered a tone sucker and the oscillation returned. I then changed the grid wire to shielded and it resolved. Well, that's part of the problem. One is that 330 picofarad is far too large. And this actually goes on to another question that we've had from Nigel Truman, 5931. He says, great video. Once again, I know this is not a technical channel. I was interested in the choice of capacitor size for that parasitic oscillation. What made you choose that value? Well, you simply measure, if you measure the frequency of that oscillation, you can then calculate what size capacitor you need to deal with it. Now, why Fender used such a large value in that position, I don't know, because obviously you can then manipulate that equation and work out what they were doing. But in that particular amplifier, you measure the frequency of the oscillation, in this case 39 kilohertz, and then you can calculate the correct capacitor size. Now, as JJ Sant says, Fender put that cap from grid to cathode. Now, on that particular amp, I did it from anode to ground. So I put it on the output of the 6v6, not the input. So that's something you have to be aware of as well. But yeah, sometimes you have to be as least invasive as possible. And so, unless I have customer permission, adding shielded wire is not always the way I'm allowed to go. Whereas adding a small capacitor on the socket is the least invasive and arguably the most effective. So anyway, thanks for both of those questions. Just doing the eyelets on these 3 boards for the next set of builds that I'm doing. So we've got at the top here, this is an Ainsley Lister signature board. This is a 57 tweed, and this is a PR 18. So as you can see, I have drilled the boards, and now I'm just popping in the eyelets. And this is one of those jobs that just seems to take forever when you're doing it. But once you've done and you look at the clock, you realise it didn't take a lot of time at all. but when you're doing it, time just seems to slow down so slowly. You feel like you're doing this forever. One eyelet at a time. On and on and on. All done then. Felt like it took forever, but it actually only took 20 minutes to do the 3 boards. Less than 20 minutes actually. So just going to swage all the eyelets in place and then clean all the fingerprints off, bits and pieces, and then I can start populating these. ATEC9020 says, I have a thing about carbon comp resistors. I don't like them. The mojo of them has no value if the mojo disappears when the temperature exceeds 75 degrees Fahrenheit, the humidity goes above 20%, and the voltage that day is 5% higher than normal. Carbon comp resistors are just not worth the trouble. I doubt a person could succeed in a double-blind test to tell which of 3 resistor types is which. I prefer metal film for stability, lifespan and tolerance. Carbon film is second best because you can't argue with them. Carbon comp though, hard pass. Yeah, I agree with you for most of the part. I don't use carbon comps in my build, mainly because they are, well, 2 reasons. One, they are incredibly noisy. The Johnson noise that they generate is just insane. I mean, why? They are also the cheapest to manufacture, but the most expensive to buy. So the capitalists have, cracked on that one, haven't they? And you're right. Any perceived, tonal benefit, which I don't believe there is kind of irrelevant. Which is why you see in my amplifiers, I use carbon films. I buy a good quality brand. They're all pretty much bang on spec. They're affordable, they're reliable, they sound good if you want to go down that route. They last long, and I buy them in packs of 5,000 at a time. So I don't, and for most of the resistors in my amps, I use carbon films. Metal films where appropriate, same with wire wound, stuff like that. Cements where appropriate. But yeah, in my own amps, I don't like carbon comps. But as I've explained before, for vintage repairs, the thing that really annoys me is you get a beautiful vintage amp come in, you open it up, and someone's put bright orange capacitors in it. They've put, weird colour resistors in it. It just looks odd. It's not appropriate for the amp. If the amp came with carbon comps from the beginning, and the customer was happy with that, then there's no reason not to use them, because that's the most vintage appropriate, right? If the customer complains about noise and you can identify that it's certain resistors are causing noise, then you can talk about replacements and things. But yeah, but for some of the vintage stuff I work on, especially the high value stuff, it's always worth keeping some carbon comps on hand in all the the common popular values, so you can do like for like replacements, so it looks the least minimally invasive as possible. You know how I just said that I hate opening up an amplifier and seeing a brightly coloured component, especially in a vintage one, that stands out like a sore thumb? Well, guess what? I ordered the dual section 8+8 axial and the 32+32 can from F&T. Now the product pictures for them, they're black. But what's turned up is brightly blue components. Oh, I literally can't win this week. So I don't know when they changed that, because I distinctly remember them being black. So why have they gone to sprayed blue? Absolutely bizarre. So I'm going to have to talk to the customer, see if he minds. If not, I think I've got heat shrink large enough that I could just cover the body up so it doesn't stand out, if that's what the customer wants. But How annoying is that? They should be black. Look, here's a picture of it. Yep. Well, that's it then, guys. Thank you very much for watching once again. Please put all your comments and questions down below. Thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already. If you're feeling really generous, why not join the channel like these guys have? And I will catch you all at the next one.